This is a training area, not a tourist zone. An officer turns to address a woman standing quietly at the edge of the training field. Small frame, shoulder-length hair. She just nods, says nothing. But when the wind lifts her sleeve, it reveals a tattoo, underwater waves curling around the code F-17X. The Marine commander just walks over, sees it, and immediately freezes. Sarah Chen, 31 years old, small build, short black hair to shoulders, calm eyes that seem to take in everything while revealing nothing. That day, she only came to the training ground to watch her little brother's first sniper training session. Wearing a thin jacket, sunglasses, and worn combat boots that nobody seems to notice. Nobody pays attention to her, except curious glances from a few recruits who whisper about the civilian who showed up unannounced. A sergeant turns to remind her, "This area isn't for visitors without clearance. Please move behind the barrier." She nods, stands up, gently pulls her sleeve down. A recruit blurts out laughing, "This lady probably thinks she's in a movie, watching Marine teams train like those TikTok videos." The other recruits snicker. One of them whispers loud enough for her to hear, "Bet she's here trying to get Instagram photos with real Marines." Sarah doesn't react. She just adjusts her position behind the barrier, hands clasped quietly in front of her. But for just a moment, her eyes scan the training field with the practiced gaze of someone who's assessed combat zones before. The movement is so subtle that only the most observant would notice. "Ma'am," another officer approaches. "Civilian observation is only allowed during designated public demonstrations. This is active training." I understand," Sarah says softly. "I'm just here for my brother. He's nervous about his first qualification test." The officer looks skeptical. "Which recruit is your brother?" "Jake Chen. He's the one with the shaky hands on the Barrett." The officer glances over at a young man struggling with a massive rifle. "Yeah, well, maybe you should wait in the parking lot. He needs to focus." "Of course," Sarah replies, but she doesn't move. She just watches quietly as her brother fumbles with the weapon setup. A sergeant nearby shakes his head. These family members always think they can just show up and watch. This isn't a little league game. "Right," another recruit agrees. "My sister tried the same thing. Had to tell her this is serious business, not entertainment." Sarah hears every word. Her jaw tightens slightly, but she maintains her composure. When Jake drops the bipod for the third time, she can see his confidence crumbling. The instructors are getting impatient, their voices getting sharper with each mistake. Sarah's jaw tightens as she watches her brother's hands shake more with each failed attempt. She knows that look, the spiral of self-doubt that can destroy a soldier's confidence forever. "Maybe I should go," she murmurs to herself. But then Jake looks over at her with desperate eyes, the same look he had when he was 8 and couldn't ride his bike. She stays. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave," the sergeant says more firmly. "You're becoming a distraction." "I'm not talking to anyone," Sarah protests gently. "I'm just standing here." "Your presence is affecting the recruit's performance. He keeps looking over here instead of focusing on his weapon." Act 1, the moment of recognition. Have you ever seen someone get underestimated, then silence an entire crowd? I've witnessed this when a trainee accidentally drops an M82 rifle. Sarah frowns and steps forward to pick it up, adjusting the hand position. Left hand closer to the stock, pull your shoulder back. "Wind's coming from the right at about 8 miles per hour, she says quietly, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone who's done this 1,000 times before. The trainee grins awkwardly. "You know how to use an M82. "I know how to breathe," Sarah replies with a slight smile. But there's something in her tone that makes the trainee suddenly stand straighter. Sarah gently adjusts her sleeve, correcting the position. Then a tattoo emerges, tactical code F-17X, with a black spiral wave symbol, surrounded by coordinates that only special operations personnel would recognize. The ink is faded but still clearly visible against her pale skin. A nearby instructor immediately falls silent, his eyes widening as he recognizes the significance of what he's seeing. Right then, Marine Commander David Brooks steps out, reviewing reports. He's a 20-year veteran who's seen 3 tours of duty and thought he'd seen everything. He happens to glance over, sees the tattoo on Sarah's arm, and freezes completely. The clipboard slips from his hands and hits the ground with a sharp crack that echoes across the suddenly silent training field. His voice trembles slightly. Sarah Chen, F-17X, the sniper position responsible for Operation Eagle Storm in 2014. Sarah nods. The entire training field goes quiet. Commander Brooks approaches slowly, like he's seeing a ghost. "Ma'am, you're supposed to be classified." "I am classified," Sarah says simply. "That's why I'm not on any active rosters." "But you're here. My brother's here. I came to watch him qualify." The commander looks at Jake, who's staring wide-eyed at his sister, seeing her for the first time not as his big sister, but as someone whose life he never truly knew. "Your brother, Jake Chen. He's been talking about becoming a Marine since he was 12, showing me old photos of you in your dress blues that he keeps in his wallet. I wanted to see if he had what it takes, if he had even a fraction of your courage." Commander Brooks' voice drops to almost a whisper. "F-17X, Operation Eagle Storm, you made that shot." "I made a shot," Sarah corrects. "In the rain at 820 meters with a crosswind. Nothing special." "Nothing special." The commander's voice rises. "You saved my entire team. We were pinned down in that valley for 8 hours. Command had written us off." The recruits and instructors are now gathering around, sensing something significant is happening. "Ma'am," a young female recruit asks, "what's Operation Eagle Storm?" Commander Brooks answers before Sarah can. "Classified operation. Deep in enemy territory. My team was trapped in a narrow valley, surrounded by hostiles on elevated positions." He looks directly at Sarah, and for a moment, the hardened Marine's voice wavers. "We called for air support, but weather conditions made it impossible. Satellites couldn't get a clear picture through the storm. We were running out of ammunition, and 3 of my men were wounded." "So what happened?" Another recruit asks. "A guardian angel," the commander says. "Someone took out 9 targets from an impossible position in conditions that would challenge our best snipers." Sarah shifts uncomfortably, unconsciously touching the tattoo on her arm. "Commander, this isn't necessary. These young Marines have their own missions to focus on." "It is necessary," he interrupts, his voice growing stronger. "These recruits need to understand what real excellence looks like, what it means to go beyond the call of duty when everything is on the line." He turns to address the entire group, his voice carrying the weight of command. "This woman saved 8 Marines with 9 shots in a thunderstorm from a position that our intel said was impossible to reach. She did what an entire air support squadron couldn't do." "How is that possible?" Jake asks, his voice barely audible. Sarah looks at her brother, and for the first time, Jake sees not his protective older sister, but a warrior who made impossible choices in impossible circumstances. Because sometimes impossible is just another word for necessary. And sometimes, when good people are about to die, you don't get to choose the easy path. The commander nods slowly. "After the operation, she disappeared, refused commendation, refused recognition, said she was just doing her job." "Because I was," Sarah says. "You would have done the same for me." "Ma'am, with respect, none of us could have made those shots. What you did was legendary." A heavy silence falls over the training ground. "Is that why you left?" a sergeant asks. "Because it was too much?" Sarah shakes her head. "I left because the mission was over, and because I never wanted to take another life unless it was absolutely necessary." Commander Brooks studies her face. "And was it necessary?" "Yes," Sarah says without hesitation, "because good men were going to die if I didn't act." "Have you ever thought someone was ordinary, then one small detail made you freeze?" I was stunned. Sarah was once a support sniper for the covert Eagle Storm operation, operating under temporary orders, not in official ranks. Because she was only air support backup in that operation, she took down targets from 820 meters in rain and wind conditions in a mountain valley, saving an entire trapped Marine team. After the mission, she requested discharge, declined medals, turned down interviews, and refused to let them use her story for recruitment. She only kept the tattoo as a reminder of the weight of what she'd done. Her records are no longer in the system, only handwritten internal files kept in hard copy at CENTCOM, locked away where most people will never see them. Commander Brooks orders the entire training field to cease fire. "The person who has just asked to leave this area is the reason I and 7 men are still alive today." The The trainees, including those who had mocked her, all bow their heads. "Let me tell you exactly what happened," Commander Brooks continues, his voice carrying across the silent field. "September 3rd, 2014, my team was inserted into hostile territory for a reconnaissance mission. Intelligence said we had a clear extraction route." He pauses, looking at each face in the crowd. "We were wrong. 40 minutes into the mission, we walked into a kill box. Enemy fighters on both sides of the valley, elevated positions, perfect crossfire. The recruits listen intently. We were trapped for 8 hours. No air support because of the storm. No satellite coverage because of the clouds. Command couldn't even confirm our position." He points to Sarah, who stands quietly with her arms crossed. She was stationed 3 kilometers away, providing overwatch for the extraction route. When she lost contact with us, she made a decision. "What decision?" Jake asks. "She left her assigned position and moved to a location that military doctrine says is impossible to reach, a cliff face in a thunderstorm with enemy patrols below." Commander Brooks' voice gets quieter, more intense. From that position, she had to make shots that would challenge the best snipers in the world through rain, wind, and limited visibility. "How many shots?" a female recruit asks. 9 shots, 9 targets, 9 direct hits, in conditions that would make most people unable to see their own hand. Sarah finally speaks. "I had good equipment and motivation." "Ma'am," a young Marine asks, "how did you know where to position yourself?" "I studied the terrain for 4 weeks before the mission. I knew every rock, every tree, every possible line of sight." "But the weather conditions were terrible," Aaron admits. "I could barely see the targets, had to calculate wind speed by watching the rain patterns." Commander Brooks nods. "She saved our lives with what Command later called the most difficult series of shots in modern warfare." "Then why isn't she famous?" Jake asks. "Because she refused to be," the commander explains. "After the operation, she requested immediate discharge, said she never wanted to kill anyone again unless it was absolutely necessary." "But you were protecting us," a sergeant points out. "I was," Sarah agrees, "and I'd do it again. But taking a life, even to save lives, changes you. I wanted to go home and remember who I was before I became a weapon." The commander looks directly at the recruits who had mocked her earlier. "This is why we respect everyone who comes to this base. You never know who you're talking to." "Sir," one of the recruits who had laughed at her steps forward, "I owe you an apology, ma'am. I was completely out of line." Sarah nods. "You couldn't have known, but remember this feeling next time you meet someone you don't understand." "Ma'am," a female trainee asks, "do you ever regret leaving?" "Never," Sarah says firmly. "I did what I was trained to do. I saved good people, and then I went home to live a normal life." "But you still have the tattoo," Commander Brooks observes. Sarah touches her arm gently. "Because I never want to forget the weight of those decisions or the faces of the men I brought home." The commander turns to Jake. "Your sister is a hero, son, in the truest sense of the word." Jake stares at Sarah with new eyes. "Sis, I had no idea." "That was the point," Sarah says with a small smile. "Heroes don't need to announce themselves. If you've ever forgotten someone who did the right thing without anyone knowing their name, right, I remember them." Sarah doesn't reclaim her rank, doesn't appear in public. "I just came to watch my brother's first qualification. I didn't expect my past to be recognized." She stays to watch Jake complete his sniper training. With her quiet guidance, he passes with flying colors. "Breathe out halfway, hold, squeeze gently," she whispers to him during his final test. Jake nails his target from 400 meters. His hands are steady now. After that day, the Marine commander writes a special note on the training range bulletin board. "If someone quiet corrects your aim, listen carefully. They might be the person who once protected your back in the darkness." A group of female recruits start printing the code F7X on their training notebooks. Nobody at the training ground jokes about people who just came to watch anymore. When Sarah prepares to leave, something extraordinary happens. Every person on the training field, instructors, recruits, support staff, forms 2 lines, creating a path to the exit. Nobody ordered this. Nobody organized it. They just did it. As she walks between the lines, each person salutes. Not because they have to, but because they want to. Jake walks beside her, his chest puffed with pride. "Sis, that was incredible." "No, Sarah corrects gently. That was necessary. There's a difference. At the gate, the young recruit who had mocked her earlier approaches. Ma'am, I learned something today I won't forget. What did you learn? Sarah asks. That heroes don't always look like heroes. Sometimes they look like someone's big sister. Sarah smiles. Remember that lesson. It'll serve you well. As she drives away, Jake in the passenger seat, she notices him staring at her tattoo, trying to reconcile the sister who used to help him with homework with the woman who saved 8 Marines in a storm. Does it hurt? He asks quietly. Getting it? No. Remembering why I got it? Sometimes. But forgetting would be worse. Do you regret it? Sarah considers this, her hands steady on the steering wheel. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that 9 people had to die for 8 to live. But I don't regret choosing to act when action was needed. 6 months later, Jake graduates at the top of his Marine class. During his speech, he mentions his sister, not by name, but by example. I learned that true strength isn't about what you can do. It's about what you choose to do when everything depends on you. The instructor who trained him knows exactly who he's talking about. And sometimes, late at night, when new recruits ask about the F-17X codes they see around the base, the older Marines tell them that's a reminder that legends walk among us, and most of them prefer to stay quiet. Type, I will live with respect if you believe real heroes never introduce themselves. Sarah just came to watch. She demanded nothing. She mentioned no achievements. But a small tattoo, etched in special ink, made a Marine commander freeze, stand at attention, and fall silent. Don't underestimate the person standing on the sidelines. They might have once kept your entire team alive in the rain without ever telling anyone about it. The most powerful people often hide in plain sight. They don't need recognition because they know their worth isn't measured by who knows their name. It's measured by who's alive because of what they did in the darkness. Next time you see someone watching quietly from the corner, remember, they might be the guardian angel who saved lives while you were sleeping safely in your bed. And the next time you're tempted to judge someone by their appearance, look closer. Sometimes the most extraordinary people are the ones who choose to look ordinary, because true heroes don't need to prove themselves to anyone. They already proved it when it mattered most.